Hello, greetings. I am Bragi, and today I'm here to tell you a story. And the story comes from that wonderful land of Scotland, home of the Scots, those very brave men and women. And oh yes, whiskey and great stories and Loch Ness Monster and all those things we associate with Scotland. Now, as you can see, I'm a Viking and I am carrying my sword. And today's story, is about a farmer. And it's about a farmer and a Kelpie. But this story also has another hidden element right at the very beginning. So keep watching. This story has a marvellous creature we know as a merman. So a long time ago, in the land of Scotland, oh yes, a wonderful place, very mountain-esque and valleys and glens. Oh, it really does remind me of North Derbyshire and the valleys and dales there, but not on such a dramatic scale as Scotland. So in the old times, in the medieval age, we can go back 1,000 years or more, in those age where people had much simpler lives and shorter lives, but they were probably happier than today because we are spoilt by too much TV and too much entertainment and too much food and luxury of hot water and electricity. And so this farmer, he's been around a while, he was in his 40s, so at that point in his life he was considered to be quite old, younger than me. And he's worked hard all his life. He didn't really inherit much from his parents. He just inherited an old farmstead which over the last few seasons he's been working on, and now it's a grand place, a grand farmhouse. And he was out by a tree that day chopping it down for firewood, and he was getting a bit frustrated all morning because no matter how many times he tried to chop the tree down, it just wouldn't come down. It was so thick and wide, and it's one of those chores and jobs that will take a week, going back 4 or 5 occasions to keep having a go. And so he thought to himself, well, I'm going to go fishing, because even though, he's got a nice longhouse, he's not very rich, he's still quite poor, He's only got one sword and a couple of axes and 2 spears, and that's not very much. And although he's got a bit of land and some animals, he most relies on that for his food. And this season gone for him not been so great. His wheat and his barley hasn't produced so well because the land where he farms is quite barren and the soil isn't the best. It's not rich soil. You need rich soil for good crops. And he's got some sheep and a couple of cows, but they've not bred so well this season, and so he hasn't got the spare amount of meat he'll have. And so he's having to go out fishing. Often farmers did, and he lived luckily by the coastline, just up a little river, a few leagues rowing, and then it was a matter of sailing to somewhere where he knew he could fish. And so he got back from chopping the tree, and he gave up on the tree, and he lived in a nice place. We've got some trees around his long house, and he had a few moments to eat some food and look at nature and listen to the birds and look at the clouds. That was how people had entertainment in those days. They listened to nature and they watched nature. Let's face it, some clouds are better than some bloody Netflix TV series and films. And so he had his lunch. Always eating in those days, even though you ain't got a lot, you got to eat because you got to keep up the strength for going out rowing. And so he got one of his younger sons who's now old enough to go out in the boat with him to come out, and he had some fishing line and a net. Oh, luxury, both methods. Of course the line had loads of metal hooks and he made them himself. He's got a forge on the farm. Most farms did have a forge, but not every farm or farmer could use the forge. Sometimes it was a matter of waiting for a travelling blacksmith to walk on by and say, do you want anything making for a few days before I go on my travels to another farm? And that was often how blacksmiths made their coin. Some had permanent places of manufacturing their helmets and the swords and the daily items, like little nice to eat with, and all manner of cooking utensils, and ladles and skillets and pans, cauldrons. It wasn't just about helmets and making a sword. Oh no, it's all about the daily items of the day. And so, he got in the boat and he started rowing down the river to this old man. He's a Scottish man, no name as ever in these old folk tales, and this is the recorded one in a book I have. And rowing away, and there he was. He spent all afternoon. He got to the place where he wanted to be, and he first of all tried to fish with the net, and he got a few fish, but he wasn't brilliantly successful. And then he thought, well, it's quite deep here, so we'll sink some line, and then he caught something very heavy. As often in these stories and folk tales where a merman or a mermaid is involved, they often get caught on fishing line. And so he dragged up this merman, and he was astonished. What's this? A wild man in the water? At first he just thought it was some man who fell over a longship or some boat, or perhaps he got drunk and fell off a cliff. But no, he saw a tail on this man, and the merman begged for his life. He said, "If you let me go, I will tell you something that you don't know." Well, this old Scottish man was, rather inquisitive. He thought, oh right. And so he managed to get the hook of the tail of the merman, and gave him a bit of horn and mead. The merman looked quite happy. I think I would be if I was a merman and I just had some nice mead. And you may be asking yourself, well, Bragi, what is mead? Oh, mead is just like honey and water, and they brew it and they get a very nice drink, and add a bit of yeast as well. Maybe in the old days they would have different herbs, and they would know different ways and tricks and methods. Oh yes, there's a lovely man on TikTok that makes mead called Sam. Should check him out. And check out mead. Looking at a bird above me. It's a crow, sign of the gods. And so, he let the merman go, and the merman kept his promise. He said, "You will see a Kelpie 3 times in your life, but on the 3rd time, the Kelpie will be seen near an old cave. And in that cave, at the very back, is a chest of treasure." And now the Scotsman, thinking about treasure and coin, thought, hey, there might be something in this. And so he always remembered this. And he never again in his life, when he went out fishing, which he did most weeks, he never saw a merman again. He never saw this merman either again. I mean, it would be amazing if it did. And so he thought nothing about it until one day when he was fishing again. And this time he didn't see a merman. In the distance he saw what he said was a Kelpie. It was like a horse riding on top of the waves. And then it kind of like jumped onto the side of like a cliff with a bit of a stone hangover. And before his eyes it turned into this magnificent naked woman, and well, he couldn't believe it. And then suddenly she dove in and it became a horse again. And this is the first time he's seen something like this, and he knew it was a Kelpie. He knew it was one of these mythical creatures of Scotland, seen in most lakes and lochs, as the Scottish Tourist Board will tell you. Oh yes, they do love a good story, and I believe in the Kelpie. Oh yes, many don't. But they're not here now. And so, the old man, he noted this, and again some time went past, and he was walking on a cliff. He was getting old in his life, and he was in his late 40s now, and again it was a stormy day, and he saw this Kelpie on like a same kind of a rock formation on the beach, and it dived in and even waved at him. Hello! Well, perhaps it didn't, but kind of make you think, what kind of a voice does a Kelpie have? High voice, hello, or low voice, hello? I don't know. I'd imagine it have a kind of a enchanting high-pitched voice, and would probably sing to you in some kind of a hoarse, humanesque light. And so, you know, he noticed this again, and he went round the longhouse, and of course by this time everybody in the whole area knows about this merman telling this old Scotsman about the premonition of what's going to happen in the future. And so once again, a few years passed, and he was walking down the street, he was looking for wood to go and copy some hazel and some ash, because wood was very important and he needed some. And in the middle of a stream was a small island, and on the island he saw this woman again, naked again. Well, you don't often see naked women back in the Dark Ages because women always kept covered up. You know, in those days, if you saw an ankle or a shoulder, then that was very exciting. So to see a whole naked woman before you, wow! You know, he couldn't believe it. He had to sat down. You know, he sat down in disbelief, and then suddenly it noticed him. Did the Kelpie, because Kelpies are shape changers, and it just dived into the river. And it became a horse and swam away. So at this point he knew that around this area was a cave. There was lots of treasure, and being a Scotsman he wanted the treasure for himself because he did not have a lot of coin. He wanted that nice flash sword, he wanted the Dane axe, he wanted to go and hire a load of Viking men and go and raid somewhere, because let's face it, that's what you do in those times. You have fun and you go out, and you know, you could buy an Anglo-Saxon lyre or get some wine from some far distant place. Whatever he wanted, he could have the coin. And so he went and fetched his sons that very afternoon after he saw the Kelpie for the third time. And it's amazing how often in these stories do we have the magic number 3 appear. Often. And as you say, timing is everything. And so, you know, like William Shatner, he boldly went with his men, this time down a glen, to go and find some treasure that was hidden again. And they looked around, and so eventually they found hidden behind a load of wood and old bramble, a cave entrance, partly collapsed. They got some wooden spades and, you know, like the boldest of men, they dug it out, and they could get in the cave, and they got an old torch. They lit on a bit of the old stick, got some wag and a bit of tallow or fat, and they made a torch and they went in. And sure enough, at the end of this very cave, some say it was a man-made cave, some say it was made by the giants, but I don't know. But some say it was just natural and just been there for a long time. Perhaps it was a cave of Merlin, I don't know. You tell me. And so they went in. And they did, they found a massive chest of treasure. And that very Scottish Hiberno Viking became very wealthy and could buy all the shields he wanted. And that is the end of the story and the end of the video. But if you can do 2 things for me and for the channel, share this video amongst all your friends on Facebook or wherever you share things, and give us a like. Goodbye. As I walk away to go and dig up my field, just in case some buried treasure. You never know. Oh yes, I love a good Scottish story.